Part 2. Jerry Yan and Tong Liya's first day in Hollywood. The morning sunlight spilled over Los Angeles like liquid gold, bathing the sprawling Warner Brothers studio lot in a dreamy haze. For Jerry Yan and Tong Liya, it wasn't just another day, it was the day. The day they would step onto a Hollywood set for the very first time, not as visitors or curious onlookers, but as stars, hand-picked to headline a high-budget international romance thriller. The studio gates were swarmed with paparazzi, their cameras flashing relentlessly, creating a blinding staccato rhythm against the roar of journalists shouting questions in multiple languages. Jerry, in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit, stepped out of the black Cadillac first. His calm, almost unbothered demeanor was a stark contrast to the frenzy around him. Beside him, Liya emerged, every inch the goddess, in a flowing ivory dress that danced with a breeze, her eyes catching the morning sun like twin flames. As they walked together side by side, whispers rippled through the crowd. They weren't just co-stars. There was something magnetic, unspoken, that made every camera cling to them like bees to nectar. Inside the lot, the air was buzzing with a different kind of energy, the orchestrated chaos of a Hollywood production. Dozens of crew members hurried across the polished floors of the soundstage. Massive light rigs hung overhead, cameras the size of small cars sat ready, and towering set pieces recreated a lavish European ballroom where their first major scene would unfold. Jerry glanced at Liya as they were handed their scripts for the day's shoot. "Ready for this?" he murmured in Mandarin, his voice low enough for only her to hear. She smiled faintly, a mixture of nerves and excitement flickering in her eyes. "I've been ready since the day I met you," she replied, a line so natural yet layered that even Jerry paused, unsure if she was speaking as herself or as the character she was about to play. The director, a towering man with a British accent that could slice glass, clapped his hands to gather attention. Scene 23. Ballroom entrance. Jerry, Liya, you'll walk down the grand staircase, meet in the center and exchange your first lines. Think electric tension. The whole film hinges on this chemistry. Chemistry. The one thing they didn't need to fake. The set was breathtaking. A glittering chandelier dripped with crystals, casting shimmering rainbows across the polished marble floor. Extras in extravagant costumes moved like living ornaments, their murmurs blending with the faint strains of a live string quartet. Jerry stood at the top of the staircase, his posture regal, his gaze scanning the scene below. Liya appeared opposite him at the other end of the balcony, her dress catching the light like a constellation wrapped in silk. The moment their eyes locked, something shifted in the air. Crew members held their breath. The camera operators, though seasoned professionals, adjusted their frames nervously, sensing they were about to capture something real. Action! Jerry descended slowly, each step echoing in the hollow silence left by the paused music. Liya mirrored him, her heels tapping against the marble, the faintest tremor in her breath. Halfway down, the director leaned forward in his chair, eyes narrowing. The way they were looking at each other wasn't scripted. It was deeper, sharper. It was the look of two people carrying years of unspoken history, slipping it into a fictional world like a secret no one else could touch. When they finally met in the center, Jerry took her hand, the movement achingly slow, his thumb brushing her knuckles as though memorizing their shape. "You've changed," he delivered his line in flawless English, but his gaze never wavered from hers. "And you haven't," Liya replied, her voice soft yet cutting, the perfect mixture of longing and accusation. The director didn't call cut. He simply let them stand there, locked in a silent war of emotions, the camera rolling like it was afraid to miss even a blink. When cut finally came, the crew erupted in applause, rare for a first take. The British director leaned back in his chair, a slow smile creeping across his face. "If the rest of this film feels like that, we're making history." Back in their private dressing room between takes, the world outside seemed far away. Liya sat at the vanity, touching up her lipstick, her reflection framed by glowing bulbs. Jerry leaned against the doorway, watching her in the mirror. "You realize," he said, voice casual but eyes intense, "that wasn't acting back there." She didn't look up immediately, only pressed her lips together to perfect the line of color. "I know," she finally said, meeting his gaze in the mirror. "That's why it worked." The afternoon wore on with more takes, some grand, some intimate, but the highlight remained that first scene. By the time they wrapped for the day, the news was already trending worldwide. Clips leaked onto social media with hashtags in English, Chinese, and beyond. Fans were dissecting every look, every touch, every fraction of a second between them. As they left the set, the California sunset painted the sky in fiery streaks of orange and pink. Jerry opened the car door for Liya, a small, old-fashioned gesture that spoke volumes. She slid in without a word, but the faint smile tugging at her lips said everything. Hollywood had just witnessed their first scene. The Los Angeles air carried a peculiar kind of electricity that morning, the kind that made the palm trees sway slower, the sun burn brighter, and the hum of the studio gates sound like the prelude to history. For Jerry Yen and Tong Liya, this wasn't just another film project. It was the moment their names would be etched into the glittering book of Hollywood. They arrived in a black Cadillac SUV that slid to a stop in front of Warner Brothers' studio like a sleek panther. The paparazzi outside were a tidal wave, voices calling their names in a dozen accents, shutters firing with a frantic hunger. Jerry stepped out first, a tall, poised figure in a tailored charcoal suit that made him look like he'd stepped straight out of a high-fashion campaign. There was an air of quiet command about him, the kind that didn't need to announce itself. His gaze swept the crowd once, calm but unreadable. Then Liya emerged. The instant she did, the noise outside doubled. She was radiant in a flowing ivory dress that caught every breeze like it was made of cloud and light. Her hair was pinned loosely, a few strands framing her face in a way that felt effortless yet impossibly perfect. She walked beside Jerry, their steps in unison, their eyes forward, not out of arrogance, but as if they were carrying a shared secret they refused to let the world steal. Inside the lot, the chaos transformed into precision. The soundstage for their first scene was a marvel, a massive recreation of a European ballroom, all marble floors, gold-trimmed balconies, and a chandelier that looked like it had been borrowed from a royal palace. Dozens of crew members moved like clockwork, adjusting lighting rigs, fine-tuning the music, polishing the marble until it gleamed like water. The director, a towering man with piercing blue eyes and a clipped British accent, approached them, script in hand. "Jerry, Liya, today we film the first moment your characters meet after years apart. I need tension. I need heartbreak. I need the audience to feel like they're intruding on something private." Jerry's lips curved faintly as if to say, "We can give you that." Liya, however, tilted her head, her gaze steady. "We won't need to fake it," she murmured softly in Mandarin, glancing at Jerry before turning away. The comment lingered between them like a match not yet struck. The first take. The ballroom was alive with background extras. Men in tuxedos, women in flowing gowns, their murmurs blending with the slow waltz from a live string quartet. The air smelled faintly of roses and champagne, an odd touch for a film set, but one that made the illusion feel real. Jerry stood at the top of the sweeping staircase, a figure of quiet dominance. Across the room, Liya appeared at the opposite balcony, her gown shimmering under the chandelier's golden light. The director's voice rang out. "Action!" The music slowed. Every extra froze into a kind of graceful stillness. Jerry began his descent, each footstep echoing against the marble. Liya mirrored him, her heels tapping softly in a rhythm that matched his. Halfway down, their eyes locked. Something passed between them, unspoken but potent. Jerry's expression softened, though his posture remained composed. Liya's lips parted slightly, as if she wanted to speak but thought better of it. When they met at the center of the floor, Jerry reached for her hand. The contact was deliberate, slow enough that the camera caught the subtle movement of his thumb brushing her knuckles, as though he was memorizing her. "You've changed," he said in flawless English, his voice low enough to make the words feel dangerous. "And you haven't," Liya replied, her tone a precise balance between accusation and longing. The director didn't interrupt. He let them stand there, holding that gaze for a beat too long, allowing the tension to thicken until even the crew members behind the cameras forgot to breathe. Applause. The spell broke, but the room didn't. The crew clapped, something that rarely happened after a first take. The British director leaned back in his chair, exhaling as though he'd just witnessed a once-in-a-lifetime eclipse. That, he said, wasn't acting. Tween takes. In the dressing room, the walls hummed faintly with the sounds of the crew resetting the scene. Liya sat at her vanity, dabbing lipstick with a precision that came from both habit and nerves. Jerry leaned against the doorway, hands in his pockets, watching her through the mirror. "You didn't flinch," he said casually. "I wasn't supposed to," she replied, still not meeting his gaze. "But you felt it," he pressed, his voice lowering. Her hand stilled on the lipstick. Slowly, she met his eyes in the reflection. "Of course I did. That's why the scene worked." There was a pause. The air between them was warm but fragile, like glass that might shatter if either of them moved too suddenly. Back to set. The next takes were tighter shots, close-ups on their faces, the minute expressions, the microseconds of hesitation. The camera captured the almost imperceptible way Jerry's shoulders relaxed when he looked at her, the faint quiver in Liya's lips before she spoke. At one point, the director called for a rehearsal without dialogue, just movement and eye contact. As Jerry approached her, Liya tilted her head slightly, her eyes narrowing as though trying to read him. He stepped closer than before, enough that the hem of her dress brushed his shoes. The camera operator's hands trembled as he adjusted the focus. The director let them stand there for nearly a full minute before calling cut. "Whatever it is you two are doing," he said, "keep doing it." By the time the final take was wrapped, the sun outside had begun to set. News had already begun to leak, snippets of the scene, blurry paparazzi shots from outside the studio. Social media exploded with hashtags pairing their names together, fans dissecting every glance and touch. The walk to the car. As they left the set, the California sunset spilled across the lot, painting the sky in deep golds and soft purples. Jerry walked slightly ahead, then stopped and turned, holding the car door open for her. She paused before stepping in, looking at him for a heartbeat longer than necessary. "You know they'll think this is real," she said softly. His answer was immediate, unflinching. "Maybe it is." And then, without another word, she slid into the car. The door closed, but the electricity between them stayed. Hollywood had just witnessed their first